This is Support is Sexy, episode 509. How to follow your own path despite the expectations of others. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And today we are continuing our Support is Sexy Rewind. Some of the most powerful episodes. I always say there are no favorites, right? But some of the most powerful episodes, or at least the ones that really resonated with me and with you over the past 2 years now. We're just over 2 years of the podcast. And I'm doing this during the time that I am preparing for travel on this big trip, 12 countries in 12 months. I'll tell you a lot more about it once I get into it. But today, I want you to listen to this interview with Alex Okoroji. Alex, who happens to be Nigerian, is an award-winning actress and media personality who talks about really feeling obligated to go into the business that her family was in, actually going into that business, how she came into her own, reinvented herself, became an actress, became an award-winning media personality, and what that was like to really defy the expectations of others around her. Alex also talks about having a famous father in Nigeria and the expectations that surrounded that were placed on her and all the things that she did in her business and her career and in her personal life. And if you can relate, sometimes it's the expectations of others that hold us back or either just hold us in place, right? We might be doing something fantastic, but it might not be the thing that really speaks to you. So this is a powerful episode. Alex is full of great advice and, of course, amazing stories because she's a media personality. She just has it. This was first recorded in October 2017, episode 321 of the podcast, but still has powerful resonance today. So I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Without further ado, Alex Okoroji. So Alex, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Elayne, for, just inviting me on your amazing podcast. I'm so excited to do this with
Yay,
you. Thank you.
Me too. All the way from Lagos. Wonderful. So happy to have you. Yes. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Oh, wow. Great question. Okay, well, the first time that I actually fell in love with entrepreneurship must have been when I was 11. It's weird. But I was this 11-year-old, and I remember walking into a store with my mom. At the time, she used to work at the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And then I think she wanted to leave. She had been working for like 15 years, and then she wanted to start her own business because she used to kind of like design clothes on the side. Like she loved fashion. And she, so we had walked into the store. It was a fashion store, right? But, what was amazing about it was that it wasn't just, they weren't selling just clothes or anything like that. It was really a fashion accessory store. So they had like, from collars to buttons to just everything that makes clothes beautiful, right? To lapels to just things that we never even really realized, trimmings and buttons and sequins and beads and all of those things. And I had walked into the store and, there was just, everyone was hands-on. There were just so many people in the store. And, I found out that the woman who owned the store, she had, there was a sales manager, and this person was her daughter, right? And her son was there. And all of this were like, really grown, mature, kids who had graduated from a top university in London, and just to see that they had gotten their masters and everything, and they, came to run, their mother's business, and they just had so much grace doing that. And I thought, oh my God, this is so cool. I'd love to do this. And, my mom, also, while shopping and buying stuff, I think she also decided that she wanted to start her own fashion accessory store. Mm-hmm. And I whispered to her and I said, Mom, I would love to do it with you. Right. And so it wasn't too long. She set up her own store. And I was there, like one of her first staff, and it was just really part time, because I was going to school as well. But then we had an agreement that every time I was on holiday, right, I would show up and work during my holiday. And so it started as a holiday job, me coming around, but then I learned how to take stock, right? And, I kind of got, started working with her as, a sales rep, right? And I kind of climbed up the ladder from being a sales rep to a sales supervisor, and, from that to a manager. And really, I worked with my mom for 12 years.
Wow.
So in between school and doing all of that. And so I pretty much was part of the business, came up with ideas. Then I became creative director. We started designing clothes, and then she really started her fashion line, and, kind of like really grew and became really big. So that really was my first, should I say, roadmap into entrepreneurship and what it really meant to run a business, right? Because I, at some point, became, a manager, and I was managing 22 staff, and all of them older than I was. So I was her eye, she was traveling, and I was the one running the business, and I had to, I was doing something. So that pretty much was my first stint with entrepreneurship. But even at that time, I didn't really know if I was going to set up my own business or I was just going to take over running the family business, right? And it wasn't until a family, we had a little tragic situation, I think, in 2005, and, the family house got burned, and I just kind of needed to change in my life, right? And it was at that point that I decided that I wanted to run away. I wanted to go chase something else, and something that I had been suppressing, which was really the artistic side of me, because I grew up in a very artistic family as well. I probably didn't mention that, but my father was a musician, and my mom was a fashion designer. So it was, I just, at that point, felt like, I wanted to try something else. And then right after that, and I'm sure we can talk about that a whole lot more later, but then I got on a reality TV show, and, and that's where my acting career really started off from.
Okay. So I have so many questions. It's fantastic. I love it. And you encapsulated it all perfectly. But one question is, do you feel like going into, essentially, even if you didn't know what it was called at that time, entrepreneurship has such an early age really shaped who you are as a woman now, just knowing that you can create your own, and seeing your mom do that as well, create your own, whatever that product is, sell it, know how to manage a staff and all of those things?
Yes, I think it really did shape, who I am now. I mean, we don't really think about how much of that, but when I think about it, I say a lot of things, and I say, I remember when I used to work with my mom, and I had to wake up at 5 a.m., and she had, people who, she had staff, she had 22 people working with her, but I was the first person to get to work. And a lot of the times, people didn't even know that she was my mom, because we just had this, I took it seriously. I took it like a real job. So I was always the first person to get to work, and I was the last person to leave every day. And there are days I remember when I would have a headache and I would kind of want to get out of work. And my mom would say, if you were working for me, would you not go to work just because you have a headache?
Right.
So, you realize that all of those things are the things that shape you. So I understand now why I can be ill and I still have to do a show. The show must go on. I can, understand why I would make such a sacrifices, because I've understood that when you have a vision, it is your baby and you need to give more to it. And you probably will give more to it than any other person. Even if you have a staff, sometimes they're not going to care as much for your vision more than you do. You realize that you're probably going to overcommit to it. So just growing up at that time, I think a lot of the things that I experienced or learned on the job have really pretty much shaped who I am now. Yes.
And then also when you mentioned that before you were going away or decided that you wanted to pursue your own passions and your artistic side, did you feel, and I ask this because I know other women I've spoken to who have been in family businesses for a while have experienced this. Yeah. Did you feel any kind of pressure to continue with the family business, or that you would be betraying them in any kind of way if you went off and did something else?
Yes, I did. I here's the thing, at first, yes, I did. I felt a little bit of pressure. I don't think that the transition was easy for my mom, because she had gotten so used to having me around. She had gotten so used to me being there, and it was almost like this was what I was going to do. And I remember at the time when it just started as a holiday job, and my dad would say she shouldn't be spending so much time, in this business, and she shouldn't be learning so much about money and counting and doing all of these things. But I think she'd gotten so comfortable with it that she just thought that I would do this, graduate, and still come back to the business. And at that point, I was getting bored. Right. I was getting bored with the routine. I was getting bored. I wanted to do more with my life. And I had been suppressing, a side of me that had always been there as well. And I think that it took just having that personal challenge, the disaster, our house burning, and we lost everything. Actually, I got a little bit of an epiphany because at the time I used to be part of an underground girl band. That's weird, but I used to have a girl band.
So you were kind of exploring that side of yourself. I was going to ask you, how did you feel like it was suppressed? So you were doing things, but not at the scale that you wanted to because of the business. Yes,
I was flirting with that, but it was kind of like, my mom thought I was wasting time. So like, what are you going to do? Rehearsal? I was like, you should come, you go to work, right? So it almost seemed like, even though, I went to school and I was part of the drama club, I was in the music club, I was part of every artistic group and club and, performing. I was, that was a part of me, and I was writing songs and I was part of a girl band, but it didn't seem like it was anything serious. My mom wanted me to. It was one of two things. I was either going to be a doctor or I was going to run the family business. You had to choose one. And so it seemed everything else was a joke, right? And so I had to spend so much more time saying, okay, you know what? I'd rather do the family business than be a doctor. And so, I spent time, and it was fun because, okay, yes, it was, I thought there was a little bit of artistry around it as well because, we're talking fashion. So there were clothes and designs and buttons and things. And so I had, a bit of an opportunity to also sort of showcase a little bit of, my creative side. But then it was becoming more business, it was becoming more, I was getting, taken away from the creative angle because she was doing a lot more of the design and I was doing the management, and that was just getting boring, and I was tired of just doing that. And I really just wanted to explore the other side. And so it was not until my family house got burnt down and we lost everything. And then I realized, in the fire that, in the fire that engulfed the house, I had a notepad. I'd written 48 songs, none that I had recorded, right? And I had I'd been writing poetry, and all of those things burnt down. And I realized that, I could always get back my clothes. I could buy new clothes, and we could buy new shoes, and, we could replace some of the things that were lost. But there were things in that fire that we could never get back. Right. And it was at that point that I just realized, you know what, I'm done with this. I want to go and try my hand and just get into the industry and just see what I could do with this. And even though at the time I wasn't really thinking about even becoming an actor, it was weird because, somebody had brought a film for my younger sister, and it was about a reality TV. It was pretty much the first reality TV show that came to Nigeria, and it was kind of like an acting academy, and there were going to be performance classes and blah blah blah, and it was going to be live on TV, and they wanted my sister to fill the film, and I was like, my sister's not an actor, right? And so I jokingly filled the film. I wasn't really taking it seriously. I didn't think anything was going to come out of it, but I just filled the form and I sent it in, and then I got a call back. And it was not until the first, second, third, I think it was by the third callback, I just realized that I decided to take it seriously because I was like, okay, it was now more of a challenge for me. I didn't want to lose out, right? So it wasn't any more about, but it was more like, okay, you got in all this way. You weren't expected to do this. Now it would be too late to lose out on this. You have to make it all the way, right? And be part of this show. And so it was until I got, to be part of, got selected, got into the, and got into the house and was on television every day. And I think it was right on the show that I realized that I really, really wanted to, become an actor, and I wanted to do this. So, yeah.
Is it also, do you feel like during the sort of audition phase of it too, was there a moment, not only when you decided, okay, well, I've come this far, I want to make it on the show. Did you also have the moment where you realized, you know what, maybe I can actually do this? And I asked that because you know how we sometimes go down the path. And like you said, you were kind of casual about it at first or joking around. But then you sort of feel like, you know what, this kind of ties into what I actually want to do. Maybe I can do this.
Oh, yes. I had that, I definitely had that, again, that epiphany on the show. Again, got into it was a challenge. I wanted to make it to the show, and then I got to the show, but it wasn't until the second week when people, I started going through the performance classes, and really, people were getting sent home, and people were voting, Nigerians were watching every day and they were voting for their favorite. And, I would have some of the, like big top legends say that, they thought Alex was going to be, last woman standing and she was going to be on. And, well, while you're on the show, you don't really know what's going on outside, but
What's
it
the
just
name of
seemed
the
like,
show? What was it called?
it was called I'm Still Malta Box Office. It was called Box Office.
Okay.
It was the first one. And,
And
it
people
was the same,
vote you off?
Oh yeah, it was the same people who did, who do Big Brother.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
When
When you said voted out of the house, I was thinking, sounds like Big Brother. Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of like Big Brother, right? But it was more for, but unlike Big Brother, it was geared towards actors. So you needed to have a talent, you had to be skilled. You had so we were taking performance classes and presentation classes and all of those things. And so it was kind of like the best actor win, right? Like the best actor win, almost like an American Idol, but not a singing competition now, but an acting competition, sort of like that. But, with doing that, you also understand that sometimes when you do these things, there's always going to be just one winner. But it's how you build your career off, how you leverage off the experience and the exposure that you get. So, I took part in it. And even though I didn't win the show and people were surprised, and again, how these things turn out. I think that it was just right after, it was right while I did the show and I got off the show. And when I got out to the real world and I would walk on the street and people were like, oh my God, I loved you. I was watching, I was voting, I was, and then it started to dawn on me that, okay, I could really, really do this. Because it wasn't just the fact that it was just like, I loved you. You made my life, you impacted me. And I'm like, really? I did? Like, you don't even realize how much influence, right, that you have on someone who's watching you. Maybe by just how real you were, or just by how you were living your life, or just by how you were handling your tasks, or just by just how you represented yourself, right? And I just found out that it was at that point that I realized, okay, you know what, I could really do this for real. And the feedback was good. All of the mentors thought that I had a good chance of making it in the industry. And so that's how my career was born, really. But again, here's another thing. It was also a very challenging period in a sense. Here's why. Because my father is a musician and he's a famous musician. So one of the reasons why it took me a while to sort of build my career in the industry was that I was worried about people thinking that I was growing because I had a famous dad, right? So that alone was also a bit of a load. It was a baggage for me because it was like, okay, if I do anything, people are just going to think, oh, it's because she's this person's daughter, right? Or it's
and tell
because
us your dad's name.
Oh, his name is Tony Okoroji.
Okay.
So he is, he still is, but he was a musician for so long, and then he became like, P-Man president, which is like the president of the Performing Musicians Association of Nigeria, which is like the biggest body of musicians. Like you have the Screen Actors Guild,
right? And
so yeah, that body for musicians, and then he was doing awards and he was everywhere and he was on papers and he was really popular. Like he was one of the most famous musicians in the country, and so it was having to deal with that. I was also dealing with the fact that he also understood the way the industry worked, so he wasn't exactly really open to me being part of it. Yeah, I think he was trying to be protective. You know how it is, like, okay, you have this child who just thinks that they're just going to run up and be great because they've got talent, but you understand that you've got to be ready emotionally, and in so many other ways, right? Because the industry will eat you raw. Like if you're not prepared for the entertainment industry, then you got to be prepared. And so I think that he just wasn't, they all knew how talented I was, but they didn't know if this was really going to be a career. It was just something I was just doing for fun, or if it was just going to be a plaything. And so that in itself was a challenge, right?
So did he try to talk you out of it, would you say, or would he just give you advice on things you should do? And I know the combination of that and also, like you said, trying to make a name for yourself. How did you navigate all of that?
Well, at first he didn't want me to be first of all, he didn't want me to be part of the show. Now it's weird. He didn't want me to be part of the reality show. I remember that correctly at first. But, And it's weird because my mom supported me doing the show, but I don't think she actually thought I was going to build a career out of it. She just thought I was just going to do something for fun. It was just going to be a show. I was going to get some money, get out of your system, and come back to the business. Right? It was supposed to be a career. I was just supposed to go have fun for like a few weeks and come back home, right? And so for him, he wasn't in support. She was in support. I did it, and then she realized, oh my God, she really wants to build a career and she wants to leave me. And so you can just imagine the dynamics of that. It's like, I supported you and I supported you to do this, and now you want to go build a career, right? And for him, it was a number of things. I grew up reading about him in the pages of newspaper. And if you leave your life, if you're in the entertainment business, you know that not everything you read on the pages of paper is fact, right? So especially as a celebrity. And I think that it just also meant, as a parent, you want to protect your kids. You're worried that you throw them into that world, and you can't really control what is going to be said or not said about them. And so for the first, few years, I mean, especially as a woman, you walk into somewhere and you're standing with a colleague, with a male actor. It's all, it's very easy for somebody else to just put a caption and go, hey, they're dating, right?
Right.
Or, just going to be something. And you find out that the media also has a way of sometimes trying to sensationalize and create something out of nothing. And hey, we've got to sell, they've got to sell papers. And so the first few years, it was tough because it just meant that every time they had to write something about me in the beginning of my career, they had to go, Tony Okoroji's daughter did this. Right? Or Tony Okoroji's daughter seen here. And that was so frustrating for me because it was like, oh my God, can't anybody see me? Why do I have to walk in this person's shadow? Why does it always have to be Tony Okoroji's first daughter does this, as opposed to Alex Okoroji, right? And so for the first few years, it was frustrating. And I remember the first time I saw a headline with just my name without my father's name, I was like, oh, finally, somebody sees me. All right. I've earned my place. And that was the struggle. But there's also the struggle. I also think that as artists, right, we don't also realize that we ourselves are the business. We're talking about entrepreneurship. And I think that sometimes it's, I just don't realize that, even when you're in the entertainment business, it really is a business, right? Or you're in show business or you're in the media business. It is a business. Right. And, so I also had to learn not to just see myself, not just to focus on the show or the entertainment, but also the business aspect of things. And I think that's where having a parent who also is grounded in the foundation of how the business works sort of adds value to your life. Because, there were times where I would get on a job, and they would offer me a role. And if I didn't have a contract, I wouldn't take it, right? And I knew that I had to sign royalties. For example, I remember I was doing this musical, and I was playing the lead role in the musical. And I was supposed to record 12 original songs in the film. And because I already had a father who is kind of like a leading voice in the intellectual property aspect of the entertainment business, right? I knew what my rights were, right? And it can be challenging for you, especially if you know so much, right? Because people really want to take advantage of you. Nobody wants to employ somebody who knows that they are supposed to take 5% of this and 10% of that, and they know their rights, right? Right. So it was a challenge, especially here in Africa, because we started an industry where it was really just people were just trying to slap things together and just make something out of, create an entertainment industry out of nothing. Right. It was very independent. Very independent, exactly, because there aren't really any very big film corporation. People are really just independent producers or independent, filmmakers and all of that. And so you come up and you have this understanding that, you're supposed to get certain percentage on, royalty for sound, and you're supposed to get certain percentage on royalty for performance and all of those things. And that can be sometimes, it could even make you look, alienates you in a sense, because it kind of feels like, oh, she thinks she knows too much, or she thinks she's so super this, or she thinks she's that. And I had to deal with all of that, all of that dynamic.
So did you feel like any of that, and for people listening, for any position that you're in, where you're standing up for yourself basically as a woman, which it even if it feels easy for you, it's not always easy for other people to take, depending on who they are. So do you feel like for you, did that prevent you from getting any opportunities, or do you have a sense at least that it stopped you from being able to work on certain projects because you were savvy?
Oh yes, it did stop me. Oh, I lost definitely lost certain opportunities. And it's not easy. It's not easy for anyone, especially when you have to work with people you think are your friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you have to mix business, if somebody calls you and says, "Hey, I want to get my friend onto this project," but you know what's right? And you're thinking at that point, okay, I'm trying to be nice to my friend, but at the same time, as a professional, I know that this is the only way that I would operate. You can think of how that's going to, you just try to imagine how that really would fly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember being part of projects where I felt like they spent so much time, they spent so much money on technicals, and cameras and equipment and blah, and they weren't really focused on the manpower. Like, how are you going to spend like 90% of your budget on technicals? What about your actors, right? What about their agreements and stuff like that? And I remember this big project that I was going to be on a television soap opera, and I think we'd spent 3 months in this and, got on set on location. And all of a sudden I looked at where they were camping actors and I said, I can't do this. I can't be here.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the agreement that we had. I can't work like this. This is the time you said you were going to do this. And this is how I'm going to operate. And at some point, it just looked like we were clashing. And I knew that the only thing that was going to happen was for me to walk away. Painfully because I told everybody I was going to be on this project, right?
Right.
And of course, that also meant that I'd lost a lot because, I was getting calls to do other jobs and I couldn't take them because I was supposedly on another project. And so that's an example of sometimes a loss. There are times that at the beginning of my career, people would offer you roles. And we're not ready to offer you the reward for your work, right? And a lot of times they would say to me, "Oh, I didn't need the money." Like, and I'm thinking, why would you think I don't need the money, right?
Right.
There's just this assumption that, oh, you're just an actor. Oh, yeah, fine, you just do it for fun, or you're comfortable. You come from a comfortable background. It wasn't that, it wasn't like my father was wealthy or anything. It was just,
They were
yeah,
making these assumptions about, yeah.
we came here, but I was working. This is how I was going to pay my own bills. I was independent. I've always been independent from the moment I started working at the age of 11. I was getting put on salary, right? And I remember there are days that, something would happen and my mom would say to me, "I'm going to take it out of your salary." So, so for me, I understood from early on how important it was for you to have your own, for you to work hard, for you to give everything. And so it was unfortunate that you get into an industry and some people offer you a job and think that, just by putting your face on the screen, that's all you needed. You don't need the money because you're a woman and somebody else is going to pick up your bills. And, we had to, I've had to deal with that, at the beginning of my career. And back and forth and somehow find a creative place for yourself, really, and just move forward from there as well.
So how long have you been in the business now? And I know you've done acting and radio and a lot of other things in the entertainment space. You're just huge in doing all of these fantastic things in entertainment. But how long overall has it been in the business now? And how has it changed? And then how have you changed?
Okay, so it'll be 12 years in December. It'll be 12 years in December. So I've been professionally 12 years.
Right.
As a professional actor would be 12 years, being in the business. But, I've probably worked in every sphere of the media business, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the camera or, writing screenplays that are winning awards. But the truth is, I had a big challenge, and this is now not this. This was a mental challenge, and I kind of want to share this with your listeners because I don't think we all realize this. One of the most difficult things that I used to have a problem answering is, "What do you do, Alex?" Right? Because I had to tell, I'm a this, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm all of these multi-talented things, and I grew up feeling ashamed about being multi-talented because it came across like I was confused. People, society has a way of making you feel like if you're not focused on one thing, like if it's not one thing, then you're just this confused person, right? You're totally not focused on anything. You're a jack of all trades and master of none. And so I felt ashamed to say that I could do this and do this and do that. How do I come out and say I'm an actress, but I also can write and I also, we're getting to a world where we're now, people are feeling more empowered to have multi businesses and multi-passions and putting their eggs in so many, but at the time when I was great, it was almost like you had to be one thing. You had to be a lawyer or a doctor, or you had to be one thing. You had to be, if you were an actor and you tried to release an album, your fans were going to get upset and they're going to go like, you were selling out, right? And if you were a singer and decided to show up one day in a film, like people are just going to go, oh, you're a better singer, leave the acting, so there were a lot of things I was dealing with, and I felt so ashamed to come because I didn't want people to think that I didn't have direction. And it wasn't until I had to come into my naked consciousness, right? And also that happened with me having a personal challenge. I got married another actor from another West African country. And, that marriage didn't last long. And again, I had to have a public breakup, right? So I finally found myself becoming something that I almost that I did never wanted to be. I was becoming a statistic, right? So I had joined the Single Mothers Club. I had become one of the actresses whose marriages never work, actors, their marriages never work. So you're getting labeled. A lot of the things that you were afraid of, right? Because we all grew up wanting to be perfect, and we worry about judgment and how people perceive us and just what people think about us and what people are saying. And at that time, I just had a baby. I got married. The marriage didn't last that long. I moved back to my country, moved with my 6-month-old baby, and I had put in a bit of weight. So I wasn't booking jobs at the time. I was just a nursing mother trying to focus on raising my child, but I couldn't book jobs, right? I'd been on several daytime shows and I wasn't filming, it was hard. And it was at that point, dealing with depression and feeling frustrated because I was a person who walked till I was 9 months. Like I popped from studio, like I went from studio straight to hospital, right? And to become the person who didn't have anything to do, right? And to not even know how to introduce myself, right? To not even know if I should say I'm Mrs. or I'm Miss, or if anybody remember who I was, because every day new faces are coming into the industry. And it just seemed like everyone had totally forgotten about who I was, and I was just not relevant, and I was just a ghost. And it was at that point that I realized that, again, dealing with the frustration and just with the judgment and, perception, I needed to come into I needed to tell myself the truth. I needed to accept my imperfection and my supposed failure, right? Again, don't forget, I have a famous family. So again, you don't only have to worry about yourself, you also have to worry about them and the calls they'll be getting and just their own reputation as well. Because again, there were all these lies, right?
And a lot of pressure around image and that kind of thing.
Exactly. So someone will ask my father, how's your daughter? How's she doing? How's she and her husband? Like, oh, they're fine. And everyone knows the truth, but no one wanted to say the truth. And I was constantly forced to, so I would go out to an event on the red carpet and, the journalist would ask me a question and I had to lie. And it was becoming sickening and I was getting tired of it that I stopped going out. I stopped going out to events. I stopped going out to I was hiding because I didn't want to lie to anybody anymore.
Now,
and I didn't want to ask.
I'm sorry, I want to ask, was the shame, do you think, associated more with being divorced in general, which may have a stigma around it in your country, or do you think it was more so having a public divorce and keeping it hidden? What do you think the shame was more, or was it a combination?
Oh, it was a combination. It was a combination. I mean, it was a combination. First of all, being divorced generally. Let's think about that. Everyone feels, first of all, here in Africa, it's almost like, what did you do, right? Why did your husband leave you? Nobody even knows. It's on you, right? Like, okay, maybe you're too busy. Maybe you should have just been at home and taking care of the kid. Maybe you shouldn't have had a job. Maybe you should just been in the kitchen. There's all that perception and judgment.
Even if you know better, it can still get into your head a little bit. I would imagine.
It gets it.
Right.
Of course it gets it here because, let's be honest, we live in a very traditional society and very cultural. I live in Africa and it's kind of like a pride to everyone, to families and extended families, and that, your daughter is married and she's in her home, even if she's dying and she's unhappy. It's almost like, that is something that is an achievement. And so when you lose an achievement, it's like you failed. Right? And there's got to be a reason, and it probably is your fault, even if it's not your fault, right? So that was something. But then to do that and to do that in public,
Right.
again, it's like, oh my God. So everybody knows your business. It's not like I can have a private divorce, right? And just go like, oh, I can tell the story. It's like, who he is. And you can ask me questions when you see me alone, because you used to see me with him and now you don't see me with him. So you ask me questions. And so it was just all of that. And then I also was, a first time mom. And so, dealing with the changes as well, thinking that I went from being, for lack of a better word, not a sex symbol, but just, being a diva, sort of, you're a single woman and you have a great body and you think you're okay and you think you're fine. And then you become a mom and you all of a sudden can understand what is, the transformation is physical, but it also is emotional. Like, and I'm looking at all the changes and I'm like, oh God, I don't even recognize myself. When did I put on this weight? I don't look this good anymore. I don't like all these things hanging out, and my body's supposed to be my tool. So so I was dealing with so much, both on the inside and the outside and all of those things. And it was a lot. And I couldn't really share that with anyone. Really, I really couldn't really talk to anyone. And I stopped going out, started hiding really, because I just felt it was easier than having to, I didn't want to tell people what was going on, but at the same time, I didn't want to lie. So it was like, okay, just don't go out so nobody has to ask you any question. But how do you get your life back? I've got a child to raise. I'm a single mom now, and my child has to feed. I have to take care of myself. We have to put a roof over, so you have the reality sets in. And so I started really, by journaling. And I, remember, I started with just penning how I felt. And it really was just therapy for me. It wasn't meant to be anything serious. It was just me just writing down. And I found the courage to put it out for the first time and share it with the world. And just the support I got back, I think people just reading and feeling like, oh my God, I can connect with that. I can connect with you. I know someone who probably is going through something you're going through, and that just, again, sometimes that's a support, right? You put that out and people can feel your pain.
Right.
And what started as therapy for me started, a career that I never really thought of. I mean, I was writing at the time, but I would write screenplays for movies, and I wasn't doing any self-help or just, I wasn't doing any nonfiction. It was really just fiction, right? And just me now having to share my story started with me now having to build my blog. And people would send me questions and ask me, Alex, can you tell me, how were you able to get, so just having that interaction with people helped me to reclaim my life back. And when doing that, I just realized that I had all the talents, gifts that were dormant. I left dormant for fear of being multi-talented. My ability to speak and I'm sure your listeners can tell I'm very chatty, right? I've been talking.
We love
it. And something that could have been a flaw, right? Because I remember, growing up and someone said, oh, she's very chatty. I had to turn that into a business. I had to turn that into something, a gift, right? So I turned my chattiness. I'm like, okay, I can start a radio show, right? I can talk for as long as I want to, right? And so I started taking advantage of all the other skills that I left dormant, my writing and, my speaking. And, I started a radio show. And from the radio show, I started speaking and sharing my story. And then I started a company, so I started a media company, right? And pretty much, just from, having that challenge, really.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that part of your story for sure. And just so everyone knows, you didn't just start a radio show. It was a huge radio show, right? A top radio show.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Now, would you suggest for our ladies listening that if they are going through a tough time or a transition, sometimes any kind of transition just feels like a hard time when you think something's going to go one direction, like you mentioned with your divorce and your family, and it goes a different direction. Do you suggest taking a moment to stop, reflect, journal, whatever that looks like, to think about the other things that are already a part of you that you might not be tapping into, the things that you're already good at or that you might even want to do and just have set aside for a while?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I feel like, here's something I wish that I knew. I wish I knew a few years ago that I had everything it took, right? That I could have done, like, if I had known that I could really have created anything I wanted to create several years ago, I probably would have been so, I don't know where I would be now, right? But I guess that sometimes it takes us experience and a bit of challenge. And it's so important for you to just stop, like you said, take a pause and see how you can reinvent yourself. For me, reinvention is so important. And like I said, I came into a naked, there's a big myth that the only time to reinvent yourself is when you're stale. That's a great time to sort of recreate who you are and renovate who you are. But I also think that it's something that we can even apply to our ongoing business, even if our business or our career is successful, to take those freaking pauses and say, okay, hey, I want to backtrack a little bit. Let me look at where I am right now. Do I need to recreate something? Do I need to you don't have to wait for the breakdown to happen first for you to say, okay, can I really let me do this all over again, or let me come up with something brand new? No, sometimes, and I think that's just from the experience that I had, with my challenge, I'm now applying constant reinvention into the things that I'm doing. For my radio show, for example, I don't have to wait for my show to be on air for 5 years before I realize I need to have a different kind of guest, or before I realize I need to have a new sick tune, or I need to change my web. I don't have to wait for people to get tired and bored, right, before I inculcate something brand new. Every time I'm thinking, what can I do to step things up a notch? What can I do to make it fresh? How can I stay motivated and keep my audience motivated? How do I motivate my guests? How do I make people feel excited to be part of this? How do I keep, so for me, it's something that I think that business owners and entrepreneurs should do more frequently, is how do you constantly elevate what you're doing? How do you recreate it, make it brand new, make it fresh, so that you are also constantly motivated? Because I think that what happens is we get excited when we have a new baby, right? Or when we have a new idea, or when we have something fresh in the oven. So the way I stay motivated is by coming up with brand new ways to make old things feel new for me. Right.
Right. And then you're doing it too. I think to your point, it's just such a good one to remember that it's more so doing it from a position of power or standing in your power, as opposed to I'm losing things or things are wrong. I mean, of course, things happen that we can't see coming. But as you said, instead of waiting until that moment before you feel like you have to reinvent, looking at what you're doing, even as you're successful, which I think more and more people are just talking about, even when they become successful and decide that's not really what they want. And everyone else might wonder why they walked away. But to your point, you're reinventing and looking at what really works, or what else can you do.
Exactly. So, and it's really so important, because even for me, I wanted to do this, and I got to a point in my life, I was like, okay, what is my one big goal? And I realized that at the end of the day, my one big goal was to create impact. I want to create impact. I asked myself, okay, so is being on screen the only way you're going to create impact? No. There's so many ways that I could do that, right? So what I had to do was create all the different mediums for me to be able to do that. And even though every time, I'm talking to someone and someone goes, oh, what is the one thing that you're known for? What is that one thing? And I'm like, why are you trying to put me in a box? Right? I found a word that kind of just creates that common denominator, right? And I would use the word, it's a form of, it's a medium of expression. I'm an expressionist because they're all different mediums of expression. So whether I'm expressing myself in front of the camera as an actress, or I'm expressing myself in front of the mic as a radio host, or in front of the microphone as a speaker, or through my writing as a writer or an author, I'm expressing myself, whatever medium. And there are people who just stick to those mediums. There are people that are never going to read a word you write, but they're going to listen to you. And there are people that are never going to listen. They want to read, or they want to watch. And so I want to tap into all of these people wherever they are in their corners, right? I would use the medium that speaks to them. And that for me is just the easiest way of tying everything together and not making it look like I'm so confused about who I am and what I'm doing. And people love it. So.
I love it. Yes, it's sexy, expressionist. I love that. I'll give you credit for that one. Now, tell us, speaking about reinvention overall, how that has led to, and you mentioned it some, but your naked philosophy, something that you created.
Well, talking about, again, back to, just going through divorce, right? Getting separated in the public light and realizing that I couldn't book jobs, and I needed to find a way to make a living, and I needed to find a way to be happy, because I was happier when I was working, and when I'm creating, I am a creative at heart. And, it first needed, I needed to do one thing. Again, I come from a culture where we don't really have the tradition of having to, I mean, now it's becoming a thing, but at the time, you couldn't really find a psychologist or a therapist or somebody to talk with, share your problems with. And in my own in my own particular case, I was worried about sharing something with someone and it was going to be headline news the next day. So I had to stick, my problems were my problems. And I had to just get to the point where I needed to be honest with myself and tell myself the truth, and just admit what my errors are, what my flaws are, what my weaknesses are, and just what really is my truth. And that's where being naked really comes, And the moment I was able to strip down all of those limiting beliefs that I had about myself, limiting beliefs that I thought society had, all the baggage, layers and layers of cover up. And how when you pile up layers and layers, they become a baggage. And I realized that the moment I had to strip them off and all of these things, I just felt a sense of freedom, liberty. Really, I felt freedom to just be who I was without any apology. And so realizing that I needed to have a new psyche, I needed to have a new consciousness, a new awareness of the real me, who I was and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to achieve in my life and how nobody else was responsible for that. And I needed to leave that truth I needed to be aware of that to be able to create the new life that I wanted. That was how the naked philosophy started. So I started realizing that I needed to, it for me just became aware of leaving, that I'm honest, I'm straight up and I'm transparent and I'm not ashamed to be vulnerable. I'm not ashamed to say, hey, I've made mistakes or I don't understand this and I'm not perfect and I'm flawed or I have fears, right? And I found this, if you need direction, for example, if you're lost and you don't know where you're going, and the world expects you to probably have a map, right? They expect you to have an idea of where you're going to, and sometimes you don't even know where you're going. I think it's okay to stop and say, "Hey, excuse me, I think I'm lost. Can I get can I get some help?
Mm-hmm.
Can I get your help? I think I'm supposed to be going somewhere, but this is the address. I don't know where I'm going to." And there's there's the big chance that you would get help. And you probably get to your destination faster. So I've realized that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be open. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's, we live in a society where people worry about being perfect. And being, people worry about that. But for me, the naked philosophy helped me to strip all of those worries, stripped the idea of what perfection was. And again, when you grow up in the entertainment industry, when you grow up with the background that I had, seeing the things that you see, there's the idea they're supposed to live up to a certain kind of lifestyle. And that can totally mess up your psyche. And so I had to be, hey, actresses are human beings too. Yeah, they make mistakes and they're not all going to stay married, right? I'm not going to be the first person who's going to end up a single mother. If my marriage didn't work, fine. If my business is not going the way that I'm okay with being open. And what I just realized that it made, first of all, it also helps you to earn trust because people know that, you're straight up like that. What they see is what they get, mm-hmm. right? So, and that's good for business because the truth is you can't run a business without trust. You can't lead. You can't be a leader without trust. Whether you're going to be a leader, your followers need to be able to trust you. If you're going to do business, people are only going to buy things from people they trust. And I think that being naked, being vulnerable is a setting, there's an awareness that comes to just revealing who you are, right? And that way people don't have to guess, they don't have to double guess what you're going to be handing over to them. They can see right through you. You're just as transparent as can be. And I think that's important.
And you are speaking my language when you talk about being wise enough and brave enough to ask for help. Support is sexy. We're all about that around here. That is what it's all about. Now, why do you think so many of us as successful women are afraid to be transparent or naked, as you say, about the things we're going through in our lives? And then how do you teach women and people in general to use your naked philosophy? Because I know that's something that you do as well.
Okay. So first, why do I think that women are afraid to be transparent? We're afraid because we're afraid of judgment. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. There's something that I think it's it's probably the number one self-sabotaging emotion, fear. We all have a fear of something.
Right.
Some people are afraid to be, some people are afraid of failure. Some people are afraid of imperfection. Some people are afraid of weaknesses. Some people are afraid of being judged. Some people are afraid of not being accepted. Some people, we all have a fear of something. And I think it's that fear of, just how we'll be perceived and how the world will see us. And we just not looking, we mirroring, the reflection that people get to see when we open ourselves up. That's what makes successful women afraid to just be honest or, be transparent about the things that are going on in their lives. And so it takes somebody really bold and courageous to not focus so much on that fear. It really takes you having to overcome that challenge. I had to overcome that, again. There are a lot of things I'm saying now that I probably could never have said like years ago.
Right.
Right.
Hindsight is 2020.
I could never have said them, I remember the first time I came out and I actually said, oh, my marriage was over. I could imagine my father. I just didn't want to picture his face wherever he was when he saw the headlines.
What was that moment like? Tell us about that. What was it like to finally be brave enough to say it in public?
For me, first of all, it was just, oh God, it was such a relief.
Mm-hmm. Liberating.
But I knew, it was liberating. But I knew that there was a backlash somewhere because there are people who had already been lying on my behalf, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or lying on their behalf because, I want to be honest that, everyone is protecting themselves and nobody wants to look bad. Nobody wants to be the parent of, nobody wants to have a daughter who couldn't stay in her marriage, right? For whatever reason, everyone is protecting their own image. And I think it could be very embarrassing for parents, especially for my dad to be able to answer questions every time people ask, oh, where's your, and it was so funny because every time they would send me invitations, they would send it to Mrs. And I would go, why is he doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And it was so uncomfortable because I'm like, that I've been separated for like 2 years and we're still doing this, right? And I just felt like he would feel ashamed, right? That finally it was out there. But for me, I needed to do it. And the most radical way was, and it's funny because when I came up with the whole naked thing, everyone was like, what is this whole naked thing? What is this whole naked movement? And I knew that I just needed to strip it all down and just reveal myself 100% naked. Like, this is me bare. And it was a relief for me. I just knew, okay, you know what? I don't have to lie anymore. I don't have to lie to anybody. And here's something that I've realized, that a lot of times when we lie, we tell lies because we are afraid to lose something or someone. And the people who tell the truth or who've learned the habit of telling the truth realize that they're more afraid to lose themselves. And I just understood that I didn't want to lose myself anymore. I was tired. I just wanted to be who I was.
Excellent. And so how do you help people adopt the naked philosophy? Is it in, as you mentioned, with blogging and sharing your story and then sort of helping people get over these limited beliefs around the reason they need to hide behind whatever the false image actually is?
Well, yes. Yes, but I also came up with kind of like strategies, right? Like acronyms and things that they can step by step, like a process,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because again, it's one thing to say, hey, you need to be naked and you need to reveal, but how am I gonna how am I gonna get that done, right? And so I would start with I came up with the EAT process, and which is the first step, which is expression, and E for expression and A is for awareness and T is for transformation. And we could break that all up, right? But I understood that, expression was kind of like the first step. And expression could be a declaration of, a desire. Or it could also be an affirmation of a challenge. An affirmation of a desire or a declaration of, of a challenge. And it's important to express how you're feeling or express what you want. Like, I feel like if we don't acknowledge that there's a challenge or there's a problem, then how are we going to find a solution? And they say a problem half shared. And I guess that expression shows us in so many ways. When you speak to a coach or when you speak to a therapist or when you share something with someone or when you journal, that is, a form of expression. So you have to find a way to channel, to sort of declare what your challenge is, or declare what your desire is. And that is the first step, because it's only until you declare that you get into a state of awareness of what the challenge. So for a long time, I didn't realize that I was bitter about my separation. Right? I didn't realize it. And it was showing up in ways, but I didn't know. On the outside, it looked like I was good, but until I started writing, and people, some people would read my blogs and read my stuff, and some people were like, "Yeah, I can kind of," and some people think, "Oh, you're bitter." Like, well, I would read it again, and I'm like, "Okay, wait, am I bitter, or am I upset, or am I, So not until I was sharing the things, and I think that happens when you sit across a therapist or a psychologist and you share something during therapy, your therapist can tell you just what's showing up, right? Because you're expressing something. So expression is so important when you need to basically strip, to get to that naked part of you. For example, let's talk about a business, right? You're an entrepreneur and you have a business, but you're not doing so well and you wish you could earn more. If you don't acknowledge, if you don't even declare the desire to earn more, or you don't acknowledge that you're having problems in your business, then how are you going to find a solution? So I think that when you first come out with expressing that, then you start to get into a state of awareness where you start to ask yourself certain questions. Okay, so why am I not making enough money? Is it because I'm not doing enough jobs? Is it I'm not saving enough? Is it because I'm spending my money on the wrong things? Or is it because I'm not, so you start to ask, there's a lot of questions that start to show up that you start to find the answers and that sort of give you a clarity that helps you kind of get to the next stage of, transformation. So I kind of pretty much, I don't want to drag this too long, but I kind of break the naked philosophy into steps. And then, when we get to the stage of transformation, I have what I call the ASRA.
Tell us about, since you, and I want to be conscious of your time, of course, but I do want to know, I'm sure people are curious that we have this EAT thing. You got to tell us the awareness. Give us a brief about.
Okay, so, you go from expression to awareness. I mean, when you express, like I said, it could be about anything. So let's say, for example, you are uncomfortable being single. Maybe you've not dated and you hate the fact that you're single and you wish you had a man in your life or a woman in your life or whatever it is. And you have to express that desire you have to acknowledge the fact that you have a challenge. So I am unhappy that I am still single. And that would definitely challenge you to ask yourself certain questions. Why am I single? Is it because I'm not, or I'm attracting people who are emotionally unavailable? Or is it because I'm looking for people in the wrong place, I'm looking for men in the wrong places? Or is it because I'm not giving enough time to dating? Or is it because I hang out? You start to ask yourself questions, and that brings you a form of awareness as to what your habits are. And what you need to do to going on to the next stage. Now, the most beautiful part of, the first two things happen really are very psychological, but the phase of transformation, which is the best part for me, is the practical place, and which is where I bring the ASRA. And the ASRA, A stands for authenticity, which is we already know that it's important for you to be authentic, and S is for stripped, and R is to reveal, and A is for awareness. And I can break that down and show you how you can apply that in your business. So let's say authenticity. Let's talk about a business. For example, you want to start a project or you want to start something new. I've realized that a lot of people are not very authentic about their business, or their projects, or why they're starting something. A lot of people have what I think is called borrowed vision, right? So you start up something because everybody else is doing it, not because you are genuinely passionate about it, but you just think it's the in thing. So everyone is into real estate right now, and you also have to get into real estate because, well, everybody else is doing it. And you have to start a podcast right now because, well, everybody else is doing it. And everybody, do you like talking? No, you don't like talking. Do you have the time to go through all the rigors that podcasters have to know? And so you see someone who would do up to 20 episodes and stop because why? They didn't have they weren't being authentic and honest with themselves. They didn't ask themselves the right questions. Did you say to yourself, okay, can I wake up 5 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning, editing audios and booking guests and talking to people 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. in the morning? No. Did you ask yourself what your intent? Are you honest about what your intentions are and what your expectations are from that business? I think that is something that people need to do. So a lot of times I've seen people who start up something that just kind of fails because they weren't being honest. They weren't being authentic about it. It was a borrowed vision. So you have to be authentic. First step. The second S is for stripped. Now, strip is a lot of people create boundaries for themselves, right? They create a lot of boundaries around their ideas and their businesses, layers and layers of boundaries, and in other words, limits themselves and limits their clientele and limits their the access that people have to. You have to take off those boundaries, right? And I see that show up in so many ways. For example, there's a reason why I personally reply. I have an assistant, but there's a reason why I like to reply my emails. Not all the time, but most times, there's a reason why I like to have a personal, at least at some point, you're going to have an engagement with me because I want you to get to know me and I want you to have access to me. And I want to, I don't want to create boundaries and walls between me and my potential client and me and my potential customer or my tribe. And so you see that a lot of times there are lots of layers and layers and people create that in their business and you have to strip down. How can your clientele or your clients or your tribe or community have more access to you? How can they be more aware of what you're creating? How can you involve them in the process of what you're doing? Right. So I see that a lot of times, big corporations, people are doing that now. People are taking, they're finding ways to get engaged. And I think that's the beauty of social media now, because you can interact with your potential clients, right? You can interact with your tribe and you can get across to people and people can get access to you without really being in your space. And reveal, R is for reveal, and reveal again is to put yourself out there. Something I've realized is that, again, women, and this can apply to even just your personal life, right? So a lot of people are covered up, right? You're in a relationship and the other person doesn't know how you're feeling. You're not expressing what's going on with you. But let's say in business, business owners, women, a lot of us are hiding behind our businesses. And it's so important for you to be the brand ambassador of what you're creating. You need to be out there, reveal yourself, be in the spotlight, right? Put yourself out there. Let people be aware of what you're creating. Even if your first potential customer is just your neighbor and your brother, your sister, and your immediate family, it's important that people understand, see you as the brand ambassador of what you're creating. Now, I say this, I remember when I first started writing my blog, I was trying to hide. Mm-hmm. At the time, I didn't want people to know that it was Alex Okoroji that was writing. So I just figured people would just think it was any Alexandra, right? At the time, my pictures weren't on the blog. There was no bio, nothing about me. It was just what I was writing. And I didn't want people to link the blog to me. I didn't want people to link what I was sharing to me initially. I wanted to be anonymous. And so I didn't have my pictures up on the blog. I didn't have my name up, I was trying to hide. But I realized that the only way that I was really going to I was going to get real genuine feedback, real genuine interaction, or even some sort of traffic and mileage is that if people could really tie that up to a face, if you could picture a face, right? And I guess that's the reason why brands have brand ambassadors and even just products come up with faces, because people want to put a product to a face. And so it was not until I put up my picture and I put a bio and, I started to reveal more of myself and people knew it was the actress. It was her. It's her. And I started getting traffic to the blog because everybody wanted to read my story, right? And people wanted to share. But then it also made the feedback more, it just created feedback. And I was, in the process of that feedback, that's where I was getting my healing, from people just writing back to me. And that's where I was getting my support. So again, I feel like whatever we're creating, for example, support is sexy, but support is sexy with Elayne Fluker, right? So it's not just support is sexy, but there's a face behind it. We can see your image. We know who's behind this amazing brand, and that makes it easy for people to trust it or to have the background information or understand or even create an attachment or fall in love with your business. Because the truth is, people make connections with other people. They don't make connections with inanimate objects or just a business or brand. So it's important that we as women reveal, put ourselves out there, bring yourself out from the back burners, put yourself in the spotlight and just reveal yourself. And so the last A would stand for awareness. And I think, it's important for us to be aware of how we show up. How does your business show up in the world? And I guess that's where it's important to take feedback and testimonials and review. You want to know what people are saying. I feel like, what is happening in your industry. You want to be on top of industry news and upgrades and, what the competitors are doing. And you just really want to be aware of how you're showing up. So I think a lot of times some people just create businesses or products or whatever it is in oblivion. They don't want to be aware of what's going on around them. How can you be, you're kind of blocked off to the world. You need to know how you're showing up. What are people saying about your business or your brand when you're not there? What are people saying about supporting sex? I can tell people are saying amazing things about it. So, so it's, I feel like, how do we apply that? But that also, awareness is also important in our personal lives, How does your partner feel about you? How do your friends feel about you? How do your family feel about something you've said or you've done? How are your actions reflecting on just your relationships and your interaction with other people? We need to want to be aware. I think that we can't carry on in a world without being conscious. I think consciousness is so important. I guess that's what nakedness or being naked really is. It's just a very deep level of consciousness, just you being totally aware, bare, not covered up in any, no barriers or anything, just you being just totally aware of what's going on around you.
Excellent. Alex, that was wonderful. I'm over here taking notes, feverishly writing notes on the process. That's fantastic. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it's funny you mentioned one of the many brilliant things that you mentioned, this idea of hiding. Well, I just did a series talking about hiding, but also me personally, even with the business, when you mentioned support is sexy and me being out front and people making that connection in a previous version of my business, not the podcast, but something else, I wasn't out front at all. People had no idea I was connected to it. They would actually say, oh, I had no idea you were behind this. But for me, I'm thinking, oh, it has to be separate. The business needs to be out front. I'm back here, and you don't realize, or I should speak for myself. I didn't realize until finally getting over myself and people saying to me, why are you hiding? That it really made sense for me to be the ambassador for my business, to talk about it with the passion that sometimes only a business owner can, at least, especially in the beginning when you're first starting out. So it definitely resonates with me, that message that you mentioned of having the courage and the confidence and just the awareness that you have to get out front there for your business and talk about it and let people know what it's all about and what it means to you, and then how it connects with them. I think in your blog's example, you mentioned people knowing it was you as an actress, but I think people probably also saw, wow, she's just like me.
That's it. It was like,
oh, if she problems.
Yeah, it's like, oh, she's real. Like, okay, like she's human after all.
Right.
She's accessible. Like she's just like one of us, right? Also, she has broke days, right? Or she has, she's worried about what her son threw a tantrum. Like, I'm normal, like I'm regular, right? Just like you. And so it's important to create that kind of connection, judgments, and they're passing judgments and they don't have a clue as to, but when you reveal, when you're naked, when you're naked and people can see you for what you are. The truth is, naked is not very pretty. And that's true because, there are going to be flaws. I don't think there's anybody who's going to look and not see something they don't like. Even the most beautiful people are going to look at themselves and go like, oh, I need to tweak that. But it's important to do that because then you can see the things that need changing. You see the things that definitely need improving or improvements. So when if you cover up, you think you're okay. You think you're fine because you're not looking at the flaws. You're not looking at the weakness. You're not looking at the ruffles and all of that because you think, oh, I'm good. I'm maxed up and we can layer and powder up and all of that. But when you're bare and you're revealed, then you can look and say, okay, you know what? I need to get rid of that blackhead, right? I need to get rid of, the midsection. Oh, yeah, I don't like this, because I can see it. Everything is right there staring at me. So then you start to see how you can improve on yourself or your business or just the things that you're creating and how you're showing up.
Let's take a quick break to thank our sponsors. So if you're a solopreneur like me, you probably live by your schedule. You talk to people all around the world, from clients to freelancers. For me, podcast interviews that I have to set up. So my schedule means everything. And that is why I use Acuity Scheduling. Acuity has been my savior for the past year. It helps me, honestly, keep my sanity. And I was excited to get the chance to talk to Kristen Barber, Customer Happiness Specialist at Acuity, about just how the company goes about keeping their customers sane and happy.
So Acuity Scheduling is an online scheduling software program really focused on helping small businesses focus on what matters to them. So we take a lot of the day-to-day minutia off of your hands. We set it up so that you can have all of your clients self-schedule in, manage their appointments, reschedule, cancel if something comes up. You didn't have to call them and do this awkward back and forth dance of what date and time work for you. If anything changes, they don't need to call and let you know. They can just handle that all on your own and you're kept up to date. And it takes so much work off your plate so that you can focus on either building your business up with other aspects that a scheduling program can't handle, or go enjoy yourself.
And as a special offer for Support is Sexy listeners, Acuity Scheduling is offering a 45-day free trial just for you. So go to acuityscheduling.com/sexy. Again, that's ACUITY scheduling.com www.the&nbsp.com/sexy. And you can take advantage of any plan they have there for 45 days. At the end of that time, whatever plan you want to continue with, you can do that, or you can stick with the free plan. acuityscheduling.com/sexy.
We'll be keeping an eye out for you sexy ladies.
And now back to the show. So what would you say, Alex, entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh, wow. Number of things. Let me see. Well, I've learned, that here's the thing, as an entrepreneur, the mindset, the original mindset that I had was that you have to be ruthless to be successful, right? You have to be a ruthless, business person and shrewd and all of those things. But I think as a woman, I realized that I can bring compassion into business, right? Mm-hmm. That it can be fun, right? That it can be sexy and I can enjoy the process. I've tried to bring in my personality into everything that I'm doing. And it's showing up even in my branding. Like, it's okay to play with color, right? I like the pink and the black, and it's fun. Like, I have bad days. There are days, I've been on my show and technology is messing up and I'm all the way in Africa. And sometimes, the internet is bad. And I've had to learn how to just roll with the punches. And so entrepreneurship has taught me that whether you succeed or you fail is really up to you. And we as women have everything it takes. Like, it's all up to you, really. You don't have to be one without the other. I think a lot of times we think that, for us, if you're going to be, you can't be brilliant if you're beautiful, right? You can't be, spiritual if you're sexy. We think we have to be one without the other. Mm-hmm. But I'm learning that with entrepreneurship, you can do it all. You can do it all. And yes, you can do it all with support, but you can pretty much just do it all.
Mm-hmm. So in closing, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be? God. And what would you say?
Elayne, you're putting me under the bus because there's so many people to thank. Oh my God.
It's a tough one, I know.
Oh my God. Like one real person. Oh, I should just thank God. Let me just do the spiritual thing. Okay, but seriously, if I was going to thank someone, it would be my son. It's weird. I know. My 7-year-old. It's weird.
It's not weird.
It would be my son. It's funny because I kind of wrote something. I said, he's kind of like my muse. The truth is that I feel like, with him, I grew so much. I matured. I came into myself. I had to step up. I had to learn to, I guess that's what motherhood teaches us, right? You wear so many hats. You have to be this and this and that, and you have to juggle it all. But just knowing that, I do this for him and that he's made the process so easy. Like, he's supportive. Sometimes just him walking into my home studio or into the office and bringing me a glass of water is kind of like sweet, right?
Mm-hmm. So
that's kind of like support. That's kind of like support, because I could have a child in the other room screaming and go like, "Mommy, no." And you have a child, and I go, I'm going to go on air. I'm going to be on the show. And he's like, "Okay, that's fine, Mommy. Don't forget to mention your website at the end of the show."
I love him.
Sorry to say, don't forget to say www. I was like, "Okay, don't worry, I'll do that." So we joke about it. I would joke and say, "Oh, he's my assistant producer."
I was going to say that he's your producer.
So just to have that. And once I just go, I'm going to be on the show. It's like, "Okay, Mommy, have a good one. I'll talk to you soon." And he walk away and just give me space. And so that, but there's so many people to thank, but it'd probably be him.
I love it. That's wonderful. Now tell us how we can support you. Tell everyone of course I'll have links to everything, but your website, social media, anything else you want us to know about that you're up to.
Okay. So, oh God, I'm always trying to create something, but right now I'm working on a book. It's supposed to be released in October. It's an anthology. It's a global anthology. And I co-wrote this book with 20 other women from around the world. And it's called I Bared My Chest.
I love it.
It's called I Bared My Chest. And, we're just really trying to, again, we blended myself and, just my co-mastermind on this, Frankie Picasso in Canada, and we came up to merge our brands, The Naked and Unstoppable, and we're just really trying to empower women and men, and people just around the world to just find their freedom, right? Find their freedom and, the freedom to be whatever you want to be, to be whoever you want to be. And that might just really start with you getting naked or burying your chest, whatever that is. And so it's a really amazing book. It's a very powerful book because we share a lot of things. We talk about business and finance and everything that concerns us as women, and one of the things why I feel that this is so good is because, I've kind of got some global sisters, right? There's a sisterhood and talking about support, just having a common vision, right? And having people support you and support the impact that you're trying to create, and just knowing that that you can do this with other women and with other people, and you can, together just create a difference, I think is so important. So yes, the book is, they can go to www.ibaredmychest.com and find out more about the book. And they can go to my official website to find out about just everything else that I'm creating. I wouldn't want to do that. So they can go to my website and they can find out about all the other things that I have lined up. There's always something. I'm always reinventing, creating something. Yeah.
Yes, you are. Excellent. And your website is under your name, and also thenakedphilosophy.com.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And as for everyone listening, of course, as I said, I'll have links to everything. Wonderful. Alex, thank you so much. This was so much fun. As I said, I was taking notes. It's just great advice and just things that we all need to remember. So I'm so happy we were able to connect finally and make this happen.
Thank you so much, Elayne. This is really special. Thank you for having me and for tolerating my chatty, because I'm very chatty, I know.
Well, on radio or podcast, chatty is what you want. The last thing you want is somebody quiet on the other end. No, you're fantastic. So
thank you so much.
Of course. So before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Oh God, I could come up with so many things, but I'll just do something. I'll just say something very simple. Expression is a sign of strength and not weakness. That was something that my father shared with me, while I was a little girl, and something that I hold till this day. Knowing that it's okay, to express who you are, and that expression, again, could translate to who you are, whether as a creator or as a business person, or as a boss, or as a leader, or as a woman. It's okay that, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, whatever you're thinking, it's fine. It's a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Alex. To find out more about her, to find out about all the things she mentioned in this episode, we still have those show notes there. Just go to supportissexypodcast.com, go to that search icon at the top, and just type in Alex, Alex. Her show notes page will pop up with the links and the resources, the ways to get in touch with her and find out more about her. Supportissexypodcast.com and just search Alex. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Please make sure you and I are connected on social media. I want to make sure that I can continue to share what's going on with me, travel, God willing, all the amazing things that are in store. I want to be able to share it with you and to hear from you what you think, what you're going through, what you're creating. Let's stay in touch. At Elayne Fluker on everything, and at Support is Sexy on everything. Actually, on Facebook, we're Support Sexy, but that's okay. Otherwise, Support is Sexy everywhere. Let's make sure that we are connected. All right. Thank you again for listening. And until we chat next time, always remember, support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.